Imagine yourself on a road trip. Wind in your hair, best friend beside you, but there's no good tunes on the radio. But fortunately, your friend is an acclaimed musician, and there's a bunch of synthesizers mounted to the car. My name is Abby Felvo, and welcome to Dash Jam, where the late great filmmaker and musician Jaimz Asmundson invites local artists on a sonic journey through the streets of Winnipeg. Our host is joined by Matt Peters, frontman for the indie pop band Royal Canoe. Enjoy the ride.
So, Matt, we're stuck in traffic in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Where are we going?
We're going to Steinbach, my very strange hometown.
And how do we get to Steinbach?
Well, I'm going to take you guys on the only scenic route that I've ever found to Steinbach. It maybe adds a couple of minutes, but I always drive the same exact way.
I'm a fan of the scenic route.
Yeah.
So when you were in Steinbach, how did you get into music?
I grew up taking piano lessons, and I feel like every kid kind of took piano lessons in Steinbach. I don't know if it's like a Mennonite thing or what it is, but I was definitely not the only one. There's this strange like musical. I think everyone kind of has that. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because like Mennonites spent so many years farming and praising and singing or something. What else do you do? I guess is the gist of what I'm trying to say.
That makes sense if it's like a religious culture.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of songs.
And it's strange now too, because the religious thing is just so evaporating. And we'll go there and you'll see like it has more churches per capita, I think, than any other place in Canada. But I feel like this past generation or two, there's been this shift, and so maybe being a Mennonite used to be it's like an ethno-cultural group, right?
Yeah.
But there was always such a strong religious component to it, and I feel like now that religious side of the identity is kind of crumbling.
So what, brought on the move to Winnipeg when you were a teenager?
I went to UW.
Oh, okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, so I got a
straight?
Yep, straight ahead. We'll just go to Fermor and take a left. I went to UW and I got a degree in history. So I went there, and right while I was doing that, I was in a band called The Pets. It's me and 3 other guys from Steinbach. We made this record and we sent it to a bunch of places. I remember we made like this great, this awesome press kit before we even knew what a press kit was. Just being like, oh, we should make like a great package. Yeah, we're taking left here. We should make this great package for this thing, and maybe like people will notice it. And then Blair Perda, who owned this record label called Endearing Records, he like just saw this ridiculous like leopard print packaging that we had made for this CD. It was like in this like wool bag. It's like, I'm gonna play this. He just randomly chose a song and he played it on the radio, and he's like, this is amazing. And then like the next day he emailed us and he's like, this album is incredible, I'd love to put it out. So he put it out, and we ended up getting all this crazy like attention for it, and so like this was like our first like labor of love record. We actually got this like review in the London Sunday Times and in Q magazine, and all sorts of British press were picking it up. And it was, we were just a bunch of schmucks from Steinbach who made this record, and I felt like that, getting that little taste of like positive feedback, even though it was pretty fleeting, and but it like gave me the motivation and it gave me the confidence. And I think for everyone who was in that group, and I'm sure this applies to anyone who's making music, you want to hear, you need to have that belief inside of yourself, but you got to get some good feedback. You got to get some support.
Yeah, I always have I always go back and forth between, or like have like this triangle of truth.
Right.
While making music, it's like I'm really making music for myself. Like I'm making music like as an expression of like things I want to express.
Totally.
But then but then it's like also when like I'm playing it for people, I get such a huge like rush, you know, from like people responding to it. And but then I also like need to have like just outside of people like outside like from like my peers and like, you know, like the press and like success wise, like I feel like I need to have that too.
I think you need, I totally know what you mean. It's like you have to kind of, you have to make it for yourself. But I think that the fuel stuff, like have the energy and have the motivation and even, you know, obviously on the inspiration side too, like that, a lot of that has to come externally.
Yeah. So what about you? Like what's your like fuel? Is it you feel like it's more like getting positive reviews, like, you know, having like selling albums, radio play, or like audience response, or like how does it work for you?
I mean, like all that stuff is good, but I think at the end of the day, and this is going to sound like such a cliche answer, but at the end of the day, I feel like I get satisfaction. Like I'm the kind of person who, if I don't have like creative successes, and that can be something so small, that could be like, oh, this beat's really cool. That's like that to me, that's this little piece, this little morsel, this little tidbit of nourishment that I need.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that comes from, and I don't know why, but it's like this insatiable thing. I have to do something creative and feel like I'm making something, and without that, if I go too long stretches where I'm not doing that, I feel like I end up getting depressed and I start to question everything in my life. And so part of it, honestly, there's a therapeutic element to why I make music and what drives me. It's like, I think it's about just like maintaining good mental health too. I'm gonna make something totally different now. Been on that vibe a while. I mean, that 808 sound is...
Yeah, that as soon as that one came out, I had to have it because I just love those sounds. And it's like nice to have samples of it, but you can't really manipulate that.
Yes, yeah, having the functionality here.
How do you feel about touring? Like, and I don't mean like the going to new places, playing for new fans. I just mean like the actual process of doing it. Because I feel like when I'm telling people that, like, you know, oh, we're going on tour, they're like, wow, it must be so fun. Like, did you get to do lots of stuff? And it's like, no, we sat in a van and then we went to a bar, and occasionally we'd stop by and get food to eat, and then keep driving to a bar. So in the interiors of lots of bars.
Like, that's kind of it. And it's like a few times we've brought friends along with us just to like do merch or something, and they had like an expectation of like what it would be, and to a person they've all been like, this is terrible.
Well, especially if because I mean, like, they're not getting that rush of going on stage.
Exactly. You get none of the payoff. Yeah, it's a lot of work for very little pay. But then also the emotional payoff can be amazing. You know, there's no greater feeling, I feel like, for a performer than when you're on stage and people are cheering for you and people are validating you just while you do this thing you really love. I mean, like, it sounds amazing, and it also can be, but that's the high point of it. And I think that I've always thought of touring as having, you know, you have the lowest of the lows, which you'll experience every day. You'll go through some sort of like cataclysmic valley of like self-analysis, reflecting on all of your life choices, and second guessing every single step straight ahead, every single decision that you've made along the way that got you to this point. And then in that same day, you're gonna end up having experiencing almost a sense of euphoria too while you're on stage and you're performing these stupid songs you wrote for people who want to hear them. And like, what a crazy life that really is when you get to it.
Yeah, well, one thing I was curious about was like, I can't remember, it was like a few years ago, you guys had all of your gear stolen.
Yeah, that sucked.
So what? So like, how do you? I don't mean to open old wounds, but like, how do you come back from that?
That was a really difficult time. I think going back to what I was saying earlier, though, it made it easier that these people I really care about. You're experiencing this terrible thing, but you're around people that are supportive, care about, and that are enduring this thing with you. We're in the middle of a tour. We had shows booked. Our album had just come out, so this was like an album release tour. We our friend Andy Rudolph had made these orbs for us, where if we hit them, it like lit up, and then also triggered MIDI notes, so we could like play them. We had like put all this money into that. We had like a backdrop. We had like infested, and we had this new trailer, and we didn't have a show for another few days, so we had some time, and we ended up like just going into like insane like crisis management mode. And I think we only missed like 2 shows. We got all the gear back by buying it, you know, and like people offered to lend us things, and we did that worked for a few things, but for the most part we just like went on Kijiji. Long McQuaid actually did us a pretty huge solid by renting us a bunch of stuff, and we figured out a way to finish the tour. And then we wasn't all insured, so we had to do one of those like Indiegogo campaigns.
Yeah, I remember seeing that, and
it was amazing. Like people were so supportive, and I think that was, you know, it was one of those situations where on one hand you feel it's like one of the worst things that can happen to you, but then and so your opinion of humanity drops exponentially, but then you also are getting all of this you're seeing all this generosity and support, and so you have almost the exact opposite feeling, like, wow, it's amazing how kind and wonderful people can be. And so it kind of pulls you in both directions. But there are a lot worse things that could have happened. And people have to go through worse financial hardship, worse real life stuff that can happen to them, and no one got hurt. You know, something else could have happened, and that would have been a lot worse. So I think we came out of it with some good perspective as well. So we're pulling into Steinbach here.
We are.
You're going to see a lot of church billboards. Yeah, so this is my hometown.
But one thing I know about Steinbach is it's worth the trip.
Yeah, that's
is that from a commercial?
Yeah, that's from like this whole automobile city
like, slogan.
Yeah, that was the slogan, and like from this whole like automobile city thing that they were trying to push. I'm not sure how well that actually went for them, to be honest.
All right, Matt. So where are we right now?
Well, we are at the Steinbach Regional Secondary School, also known as the SRSS, which is where I grew up and went to high school.
So you were saying that you were in the high school choir. Were you also in any high school musicals?
You know, unfortunately, even though I totally despise musicals, I was in a musical in high school. It was called Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. But I saw some video footage that someone had, like a classmate had, and it just, first of all, it looked awful because it was from like 1998, and it was like shot on a crappy camera, and also like just to see yourself from back then, you know, and with all of the awkwardness of your arms and like the way you're just so, everyone's just so self-conscious then, and yeah, I saw it all in me, and I was like, oh god, that was a different time. Another embarrassing thing was I had a ponytail for grade 10 and 11. Yeah, it was disgusting. And then I felt like there's like this big transformative moment for me when I cut this ponytail off. And
did you keep it?
I actually did for a couple of months. Because what do you do with it? You know, and I remember like realizing I'd put it in this drawer and then finding it, and it was just so disgusting. I threw it out, but
it's for the best, I
I
think.
think it was for the best. Yeah. Should I grow it back?
No.
Okay.